Good morning, everyone. Let's take a look at some updates as it relates to the ongoing war between Israel and Hamas. I'm recording this at 8:30 a.m. Central Time on Wednesday, October 25th, 2023. Israel says that over the past 24 hours, they've carried out 400 additional strikes, mostly over Gaza, although there were some in Lebanon and Syria as well. More on that later. During those strikes, Israel says that they're able to eliminate at least 4 Hamas leaders. Included are Abd al-Rahman, a deputy commander of the Nusayrat Battalion, Khalil Mahaj, deputy commander of the Shati Battalion, Khalil Tatari, deputy commander of the Sheikh Radwan Battalion, and Taisir Mubashar, the commander of North Khan Yunis Sector Battalion. Shifting over to the Palestinian casualties, the most recent information that I've seen out of the Gaza Health Ministry, which again, that information is at the very least vetted, if not entirely provided by Hamas. They say that 5,795 Palestinians have been killed during the air war over Gaza, which they say includes 2,360 children, 1,292 women, and 295 elderly. They added that more than 18,000 now have been wounded, and 1,500 are missing under the rubble. They've started to include that last number, those missing under the rubble, for a few days now. And I was kind of surprised we weren't seeing that early on. I just assumed that they were rolling that into the expected killed or the wounded. But if you look at some of the pictures coming out of Gaza right now, there's rubble everywhere. So it's not crazy to imagine that the number buried, whether they're alive or yet to be determined as dead, that number's got to be pretty significant. Now, yesterday, reports started to come out that Telegram had blocked the official Hamas channels on Android devices. I had the same issue on iOS, couldn't access any of those on my phone. They are still available on desktop, for what it's worth. I don't generally like those decisions. I understand the desire to not want to be complicit in spreading terrorist propaganda, but I think there's a lot of value in being able to go directly to the source and seeing, in this case, what is Hamas saying about these specific events, rather than waiting for it to be kind of filtered through various news agencies. But again, because it's available on desktop, that's where we're going to go. And yesterday, Hamas put out that a force of frogmen affiliated with the Al-Qassam brigades were able to infiltrate by sea and land on the beaches south of Ashkelon. They added that armed clashes are taking place with the occupation army in the area. And Israel released some footage as well, which appears to show them targeting and destroying some of those Hamas boats before they reach shore. But others show that the fighting did continue on land. Hamas also put out, worth noting here, that the rocket attacks are continuing to occur all across Israel. Hamas says, and this is something that their Telegram channel is just chock full of. It's like every other message is talking about a new rocket attack, a new attack being carried out against Israel. Earlier today, they said that they launched an R-160 missile, they call it, which is a 302 millimeter rocket. Mostly those are Syrian made. There are some Chinese variants, and there's been rumors that Hamas has been able to kind of assemble these themselves at times. Not entirely confirmed there, but this is a pretty substantial rocket. It has up to a 100-kilometer range, so it's able to strike quite a few targets well outside of Gaza. Now back to the Israeli strikes. There was news yesterday that Israel struck Syrian army targets inside of Syrian territory. This was in response to Israel coming under fire by those Syrian elements, artillery or rocket fire, and Syria put out that 8 of their soldiers were killed in this attack. And there's 2 things that I think are happening for the first time here. One, that Israel is striking and recognizing that they're striking Syrian army targets and not Iranian-backed militias in Syria. And the second, that as a result of this, Syrian soldiers were killed. Now, Assad and Syria are not at the top of the list in terms of who might escalate this conflict in the near term, but let's be honest, Syria is pretty fractured at this point. There's militants and factions all over the place. It's not crazy that there could be some portion of the Syrian military, some leaders within that organization that want to take this opportunity to try to inflict harm upon Israel. Additionally, Israel apparently struck the Aleppo airport for the 4th time just in the last few hours here. News came out that shortly after the runway had been repaired, like within hours of the runway being repaired in Aleppo, it was once more struck and put out of commission. As a reminder, the reason that Israel is likely striking in this case, Aleppo, other times Damascus airports, is that those are regularly used for Iran to smuggle arms in to some of their militias across Syria. Now, the strikes in Lebanon against Hezbollah targets have become just a pretty regular occurrence at this point. Every day, there are multiple Hezbollah targets being struck, and the IDF is reporting exchanges of fire, right? So Hezbollah is firing either artillery rockets or anti-tank guided missiles into Israeli territory. The response then are airstrikes and artillery fires to destroy those Hezbollah teams. At this point, Hezbollah continues to announce their fighters that have been killed. It looks like that number is over 40 in the last 2 weeks. So, just to walk back through these last two here, Syrian soldiers killed in engagements with Israel, and Hezbollah fighters also, probably more than 40, killed in fighting with Israel since this thing is kicked off. Sticking with Hezbollah here for a minute, they put out a press release of sorts along with some pictures saying that their leader, Hassan Nasrallah, met with leaders of Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad to discuss what their alliance must do to, quote, achieve a real victory for the resistance. They added, quote, an assessment was made of the international positions being taken and what the parties of the axis of resistance must do to realize a real victory for the resistance in Gaza and Palestinian people and to halt the brutal aggression. There was an agreement on continuing the coordination, end quote. Nothing really shocking with all of that. All of that's already known. This more looks like just a public appearance to let the world know that Hamas, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and Hezbollah are on one team as this war escalates with Israel. Now, there has been a lot of talk recently about the delay or the perceived delay as to why Israel has not yet gone into Gaza. We've addressed it here in a past video. And it seems like a statement from the chief of the Israeli General Staff kind of addressed that yesterday. He said, quote, I want to make this clear. The IDF is ready for ground operations and will receive the decisions with the political echelon in regards to the next steps. With every minute that passes on the other side, we are striking our enemy further, destroying more of their capabilities, eliminating terrorists and senior operatives, and gathering more intelligence. We are keeping them on their toes. Now the enemy is the one waiting. And it's especially that last line makes me think this is maybe in response to some international pressure, if you will, of why has Israel not done this? It looked like they were going to go in 48, 72 hours after the October 7th attack. And here we are, 2.5 weeks later, still kind of waiting for this situation to play out. Now, one of the reasons, a very viable reason that they haven't gone in quite yet is because of the many hostages, which is numbered over 200 by last Israeli estimates, to try to get more of those hostages out. And what we've seen so far, there were 2 Americans released, then 2 elderly Israelis released, rumors of 50 that might come out that did not materialize yesterday. To try to facilitate more of these hostages being released, Israel dropped pamphlets over Gaza here over the last 48 hours. The pamphlet said, quote, if your will is to live in peace and to have a better future for your children, do the humanitarian deed immediately and share verified and valuable information about hostages being held in your area. The Israeli military assures you that it will invest maximum effort in providing security for you and your home, and you will receive a financial reward. We guarantee you complete confidentiality. Never know how this stuff is going to be received, right? There's contact information on this pamphlet. Maybe there's people ready to provide that information, right? We continue to overlook, I think, the number of people in Gaza that just want to live their lives. They're not overly vested in the Hamas cause. They just want to not be bombed. They want to not die. So how many of those people are going to receive these pamphlets and potentially just provide little tips here or there? But at the same time, how valuable is a tip that there are hostages being held in tunnel complexes that are like spider webs in some unknown area of Gaza? It's probably where they are, right? That's not shocking. That's what the released hostages just a couple days ago put out, that they were kept underground in these large chambers. That's not something Israel is going to be able to conduct targeted raids, most likely, to go in there and get them. It's going to be a large-scale ground operation to seal that off and slowly move through clearing the tunnels to actually get those hostages. So either way, it's a step in the right direction. You never know, right? It's harmless. You might get some valuable information from the people of Gaza. Now, shifting over to the United States and our response to everything that's happening here, Secretary Blinken was at the United Nations and spoke to the Security Council. He said, quote, the United States does not seek conflict with Iran. We do not want this war to widen. But if Iran or its proxies attack U.S. personnel anywhere, make no mistake, we will defend our people. We will defend our security swiftly and decisively. On that note, it's been reported over the past 24 hours that between October 17th and 24th, so just in the course of the last week, U.S. and coalition forces have been attacked at least 10 separate times in Iraq and 3 separate times in Syria, with a mix of what they call one-way attack drones, loitering munitions, as well as rockets. Now, that's not completely out of the ordinary. U.S. and coalition forces in Iraq and Syria have regularly come under attack for years now by Iranian-backed forces. But it's worth noting, we've got 13 different events just in the past week. Any one of those could lead to escalation. And something that's kind of slipping through the cracks here, I thought there'd be more reporting on this, and there hasn't. So maybe it's the U.S. trying to not escalate this, maybe. CENTCOM put out that over 24 U.S. service members have been wounded in these recent attacks carried out across Iraq and Syria. Fortunately, nobody was killed. I think a U.S. contractor died of a heart attack during one of these attacks, but none of the service members have been killed. But every one of those has the potential to lead to broader escalation. And to step back a little bit from earlier in the video, we've got Syrian army personnel being killed, Hezbollah fighters being killed, and of course the ongoing fighting between Hamas and Israel. So the number of people, the number of countries involved that have people either wounded or killed in this conflict continues to increase. But that's all I got for now. Of course, if interested in national security subjects, be sure to check out the sit reps I put out on Substack. Link is in the description below. 7 to 10 of the top national security stories each week, along with a few podcast recommendations. But thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.